A bar welcomed an Irishman, and when the bartender inquired about his choice of drink, the Irishman responded, "I'll have 3 pints of Guinness, please." The bartender promptly delivered 3 mugs of beer, which the Irishman proceeded to drink in succession, the first, then the second, and finally the third. He then ordered 3 more. The bartender, puzzled, told him, "You know you can just order one at a time, and I'll bring the next one when you're ready for it." With a smile, the Irishman explained, "You see, I have 2 brothers, one in the States and the other in Australia. Despite the distance, we made a pact to share a drink together every Saturday night. So right now, my brothers are also enjoying 3 mugs simultaneously, just so we can still feel like we're drinking together." Impressed, the bartender replied, "What a lovely tradition." This continued for several weeks, with the Irishman consistently ordering 3 mugs. However, one day he came into the bar and only ordered 2. The bartender, concerned, said, "I understand your tradition, and I'm truly sorry for your loss." The Irishman reassured him, "No need to worry, my brothers are doing fine. I just decided to give up drinking." In Bulgaria, there was a man who harbored a lifelong dream of becoming a train conductor, and to his delight he eventually landed the job. He diligently worked as a conductor, but one fateful day, while checking tickets, he encountered a passenger without one. In an inexplicable turn of events, the conductor threw the ticketless traveler out of the train window, leading to a tragic demise. Consequently, the man found himself imprisoned and sentenced to face the electric chair. As the executioners asked for his last wish, he calmly requested a banana. He consumed the banana, and then the executioners proceeded to place him in the electric chair, expecting the end. However, to their astonishment, nothing happened. According to Bulgarian law, if an execution attempt fails, the person is set free. Thus, he was released and resumed his duties as a conductor. Unbelievably, history repeated itself, and he found himself facing execution once more. On the second attempt, he made a more daring request, asking for 2 bananas, yet the outcome mirrored the first time. For the third execution attempt, he boldly asked for 3 bananas. The authorities complied, bewildered by the bizarre pattern. They placed him on the electric chair, and this time it appeared that the execution was successful. But just as the jailers began to breathe a sigh of relief, the man inexplicably survived once again, leaving them utterly dumbfounded. With a grin, the man finally confessed, "It's not the bananas. I'm just an inept conductor." 2 Texas farmers, Jim and Bob, were sitting in a bar one evening, sipping on their favorite drinks. Jim had a serious expression on his face, and he turned to Bob, saying, "You know, Bob, I've made up my mind. I'm going to college." Bob looked at Jim, clearly surprised by this announcement. "College? What in tarnation for?" Jim leaned in and explained, "I want to better myself, Bob. I want to learn new things, broaden my horizons. It's time for a change." Bob scratched his head, not quite comprehending. "All right, Jim, if you say so, but what are you going to study?" Jim replied with determination. "I've got to study 4 subjects: English, mathematics, natural sciences, and logic." Bob's eyes widened at the mention of logic. He leaned closer to Jim and asked, "Logic? What in the world is that?" Jim chuckled and said, "Well, let me give you a practical example." He then proceeded to explain, "Bob, do you own a lawn mower?" Bob thought for a moment and replied, "Nope, don't have one." Jim, with a wry smile, declared, "Well, Bob, it appears you're gay." Bob nearly spit out his drink, baffled by the connection. "Gay? How on earth did you figure that out? Just from me not having a lawnmower?" Jim, pleased with the effect, leaned back and said, "You see, Bob, it's all about logic. The dean at the college told me that if you don't have a lawnmower, it means you don't have a house. And if you don't have a house, it's likely you don't have a wife. So logically, it means you must be gay." Bob burst into laughter, realizing the absurdity of the logic, but appreciating the humor in the situation. The next day, Jim went to the college, ready to start his journey into the world of academia. He met with the dean and explained his course choices, proudly mentioning logic among them. The dean, who had experience dealing with folks from all walks of life, decided to test Jim's understanding. He asked, "Jim, do you have a lawnmower?" Jim replied, "Why, yes, I do." The dean smiled and continued, "Then, logically, you must have a house." Jim nodded. "That's right, I do have a house." The dean probed further, "And if you have a house, it's safe to assume you have a wife." Jim responded, "Absolutely, I've got a lovely wife." The dean smiled slyly and said, "Well then, Jim, you must be heterosexual." Jim's eyes lit up with realization, and he exclaimed, "Wow, you're right. It's all about logic." He left the dean's office feeling even more confident in his decision to go to college. Excited by what he had learned, Jim later met Bob at their favorite bar. With a grin, he told Bob about his 4 subjects, including logic. Bob, ever the curious one, asked, "Logic? What's that all about?" Jim leaned in and asked, "Bob, do you have a lawnmower?" Bob thought for a moment and replied, "No, Jim, I don't." Jim, with a mischievous glint in his eye, quipped, "Well, Bob, I hate to break it to you, but according to logic, that means you're gay." Bob couldn't help but burst into laughter, realizing that while the logic might sound absurd, it sure made for a good laugh and a memorable college story. In a quaint southern town, a pair of rednecks, known for their friendly banter and occasional wagers, crossed paths one sunny afternoon. The first redneck noticed his friend, who was carrying a large bag, and inquired, "Hey there, buddy! What in tarnation are you toting in that bag of yours?" With a grin, the second redneck replied, "Chickens, my friend. What else would a fella like me be carrying?" The first redneck, always up for a challenge, had a mischievous glint in his eye. "Tell you what, if I can guess how many chickens you've got in that bag, will you give me one?" The second redneck, equally amused by the proposition, leaned in and responded, "Well, sure thing, but only if you guess the exact number. Guess wrong, and I keep both of them." The first redneck rubbed his chin, deep in thought, and then confidently declared, "All right, I'll take a shot at it. 4 chickens, am I right?" With a sly grin, the second redneck opened the bag to reveal 2 plump, clucking chickens and said, "Well, I'll be darned. You guessed it, partner. You've earned yourself both of these fine chickens." As the first redneck proudly took his 2 chickens, he couldn't help but appreciate his lucky guess. It was a tale that would be shared with laughter and camaraderie at the local bar for weeks to come. Now, in the same town, there lived an elderly redneck, looking every bit the picture of contentment, dozing away on a bench in a peaceful, flower-filled garden. His hunched frame and twinkle in his eye gave him the appearance of a character from a storybook. A woman of blooming age happened to stroll through the garden, and feeling a sense of curiosity, approached the wise old redneck. With admiration in her voice, she remarked, "You, sir, exude such tranquility and wisdom. You seem like a beacon of contentment. Pray, share with me the secret of your long and happy old age." The old redneck, who had a voice as soft as the rustling leaves, opened his eyes and replied, "Well, ma'am, my secret to a long and happy life is quite simple." Eager to learn his wisdom, the woman leaned in and asked, "Please, do tell." With a wry smile, the old redneck explained, "I smoke 3 packs of cigarettes every day, indulge in a case of whiskey every week, regularly feast on the greasiest of southern cuisine, and you won't catch me running or exercising for the life of me." The woman couldn't hide her astonishment. "Incredible," she exclaimed. "And how old are you, dear sir?" The old redneck leaned back on the bench, his eyes twinkling, and calmly replied, "Why, I just turned 36 not too long ago."